Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk to you about astrology, in particular Vedic astrology. But since we have a little bit of a change this week, I'm not talking to you from a tropical location, but you don't know that. We're going to do something a little different and start with a gate into the Chinese New Year. Let's look and see where this brings us. Okay, so basically, I'm going to also blur back to my regular background. I've been a Vedic astrologer for 30 years. You can look at my resume in other places online. If you want to contact me for reading or classes or anything like that, please contact me at 508 And let's see now. Let's go here. So we're back in the heavens again. And so I want to talk to you about two important events. One is occurring this weekend, and one is occurring next weekend, starting next weekend. And we'll go through the entire next year. So this year, this is Makar Sankranthi, or the middle of January. It's one of the New Year's that's used in India. This is normally used for business dealings or for business preparations, but I use it as a backup New Year chart. So I'd like to discuss that just a little bit. I'll talk some more about the green comet that's coming, that'll be visible on February 2nd next week. But again, as I said before, comets are not to be underestimated in their importance. They generally bring problems. The last time I saw a sequence like this was right around the time of the Hutek comet, which really wasn't that visible, but it was an important event, and society changed a lot around 72 to 75 in the United States and around the world. And these are usually comets usually have leadership and economic consequences connected with them. Sometimes they bring good things, but they usually bring change. On top of that, in a few months, we have a Jupiter Rahu conjunction, which will leave everybody a little bit confused about guidance and leadership. Saturn enters Aquarius in the Vedic chart on the 23rd. And on top of that, we have a Chinese New Year on January 22nd. It'll be the year of the water rabbit. And let's just talk briefly about the water rabbit. What the Chinese New Year is essentially a 2-week long event, and we can talk some more about that. Some of you may have noticed that I do not have my new sharply focused camera, and that's because technically, when I start with something, I'm a little bit of a goof as I use it. As I get more familiar with it, I'm a lot better with it. But this time, unfortunately, my my inertial work wasn't as good as I hoped it would be. So hopefully by next weekend, you'll see, along with the Chinese New Year, a new improved image and increase audio clarity. So let's talk about the Chinese New Year just for 1 second, because I'll be covering it some more. Now, one of the things, so essentially, the of all the animal signs, the luckiest one is considered to be the rabbit. And and you can think about the symbology connected with the rabbit. The rabbit can jump from one place to another. It can find food in all sorts of unusual locations. It can generally survive and hide if there's difficulty. However, thinking back to years of the rabbits in the past, so let's count back to 2011 and 1999 and 1987 and 19 oh gosh 1975 and 1963 and 1951. These were not particularly good years in general for the world. And I think one of the reasons the rabbit has a reputation for such luck is that it's an extremely adaptable sign, and so essentially a rabbit can react quickly to changes, can react quickly to new circumstances coming up. So, and I think of all these times, and I think about uh, at least in the last 12-year cycle, we had um, we were just coming out of a recession um, in 2011, but there were a lot of disruptions, a lot of changes, a lot of people being replaced. At least I saw that in local government, a lot of shifts and a lot of resistance, a lot of internal squabbling. So not unlike what we're expecting to see over the next year or so. In 1999, that was the Clinton. Basically, it was the depths of the Clinton impeachment proceedings. And if we go back to 1987, we had that, that was the Black Monday crash in 1987. Now, again, I realize I'm taking these very isolated events, and in 1975 we had a really deep worldwide recession. 1963 we had the assassination of several world leaders, et cetera, et cetera. So it does represent a year of change, a year of wanting to get back to normal, a year of wanting to not to fight every battle. The Tiger year we've been in has been one where there has been a lot of conflict, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blame making, and it looks like I think this year we're going to see, as I said before in previous forecasts, we're going to see changes in leadership, changes in who's holding the steering wheel in a lot of different countries, not just in the United States. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Also, it's one of those years where you should be prepared to um, change your habits or change your patterns, because if you stubbornly insist on doing things the way you always have, um, and you don't adjust to the changing scenario, you're going to be hurt. It tends to be kind of an accident-prone year. So again, be careful about driving, be careful about things like that. It's not bad entirely, because essentially there are all sorts of good things that come out of change, and namely innovation, namely you see new developments, namely you see there's a lot of artistic development during years like this. So I think one of the things is not to look at it negatively. It's going to be challenging, and we'll talk more about what it means to the individual signs next week. Today, I want to focus on Makar Sankranthi, and I'll also focus on the Green Comet some more next week. Makar Sankranthi is, again, like I said, it's an important event in the Hindu year, and what Makar Sankranthi represents is the transit of the sun into the sign Capricorn. So I don't know if you can see the chart. I am going to stop it and share it for you. This is one of those things I have to do uh, with Zoom from time to time. Not because Zoom isn't magnificent, it is, but because sometimes you don't get to see charts right away when I put them up the first time. So and again, 3 times for good luck. Okay. So, by the way, in general, lucky colors for the year will tend to be, for the Chinese New Year, will tend to be pinks, fuchsia pinks, greens, blues, and in general, not for every sign, in general, browns will be considered unlucky. So this is, again, very vague. It doesn't mean you can never wear a brown suit to a meeting or a brown dress or something like that. If it's something you really like and you're feeling lucky on that particular day, then go for it. But in general, browns are not considered to be good colors for this particular year. By the way, on a personal, I just want to say, I give a shout out to some of my students and friends who I've been in close communication with over the past few days. I am working uh, with Sankranthi Astrology to recruit writers for Vedic astrology. So if you're interested in writing for Sankranthi Astrology out of India, just contact me. I'm very easy to contact. You can find me on Facebook or on Twitter or on YouTube, and my contact information is generally available. Finally, uh, apart from the commercial portion of our program, if you want readings with me, if you want to study with me, that's wonderful. I welcome that. You can contact me at 508-525-0001 or at Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. Again, that's Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. So it's my name, the letter G, and at gmail.com. That's the easiest place to contact me. And you can text me at 508-525-0001. Okay, my friends. Also, for those of you watching on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe. I showed an increase of 25 subscribers last month, which was really good for me. It may seem like a small amount to you, but it was good for me, and I'm hoping to really grow this year. So we're going to make it. So as the year starts, now this is kind of important. As the year starts, we have a conjunction in Capricorn. So a conjunction, so this is the Vedic chart, it's the South Indian chart, and it has a Pisces rising to it. So what this is essentially when the sun changed signs. It was around 10:30 this morning, give or take a couple of minutes. So we have the sun at 00 degrees of Capricorn. And basically, we have Jupiter in Pisces as a rising sign. Rahu's in the second house in Aries. Mars is finally direct in Taurus in the third house. Gemini has no planets in it in the fourth house. The fifth house is Cancer. The sixth house is Leo, no planetary activity there of any kind. But the lords go to other houses. So we look at the house lords, we look at the sun, the eighth house lord in the 11th house. And we also look at the moon. The moon is the seventh house lord in the ninth house. So that's a good sign. And K2 and moon is in Virgo on this chart. So it's a good year for building things, for developing things. But it will mean either leaving old partnerships behind or giving up some projects that you've grown very attached to in order to make way for new things. Also, K2's in the 10th house is in, excuse me, not in the 10th house, K2's in the 8th house. Uh, there are no planets in the ninth. I'm sorry. You have K2's in the eighth house. There are no planets uh, in the ninth house. Mercury's in the 10th house, and Venus, Sun, and Saturn are in the 11th house of gains. And Aquarius is the 12th house with no planets except Neptune, which I normally don't use in the 12th house. If I were a Western astrologer, I would advise people to watch out for getting too drunk, for getting too. It is kind of an addictive placement to have Neptune in the 12th house, but it can also give a great many spiritual insights. And I think you'll find, as I've said in previous broadcasts, a lot of people heading more towards spirituality. The negative side of spirituality is dogma. So just be careful. Um, this is just advice or just an observation based upon my prejudices. Don't let the dogma um, um, blind your vision or your willingness to talk. A lot of people turn um, to leaders or to false teachers because, or to um, weird ideas because nobody's listening to them. Nobody's communicating with them. Nobody's talking with them. There's an assumption that because a lot of people believe something that is the way that everybody views things, and believe me, that's not true. Sometimes um, people believe things because it's socially acceptable to believe them. Sometimes it's um, people believe things because it comforts them. Sometimes people believe things because it's convenient to believe them. Um, or there's a lot of belief is really conditioned on a need to belong to something. Okay. And I just want you to remember that when you're dealing with people who may not agree with you, it's just really, uh, I was just trying to think of the right words to use. It's easier to call somebody stupid than to listen to what they have to say, okay? Because then you don't have to deal with um, either looking at the facts yourself or with questioning yourself um, because you're convinced that you're right. And everybody can benefit, myself included, from a reexamination of beliefs and a reexamination of facts from time to time. Now, so that's enough preaching. By the way, there are several friends I had meant to get back to this week. This should be used, not be used personally, but I want to apologize to those people who I haven't gotten back to. I will get back to you next week. So um, let's see now. Jupiter is in the first house. So again, this is kind of a dogmatic placement. So you'll see a struggle of dogma. Now, the thing that's holding the dogma in place or the rigidity of belief in place is this Saturn aspect on Jupiter. Now, you've seen that loosening over the past few months as Saturn's gotten weaker and weaker in sign. So a lot of things that we were told to comply with and agree with are being brought up into question. And that's a good thing. It's also going, so as this particular tie of Saturn stops us from thinking, Jupiter likes to think, it likes to uphold tradition, but it also likes to think. Um, you'll see a gradual loosening of tightly held positions. And this is on both sides of all sides of the political spectrum, okay? And there'll be more of an inclination to look forward, to move forward as Saturn moves into Aquarius, which will happen next weekend. The other thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is the Sun and Venus are in conjunction, so more people will be alert to their bodily health, to taking care of themselves, and but also less paranoid about it. So that's a good thing. They'll be more practical about it. Mercury is retrograde, so communications are still going to be bad. We're still going to have people, a lot of people, uh, no no favor or bias to side or position. A lot of people just lying to us or misrepresenting stuff to us. This will go on for another 3 months at least. Okay, so don't think we're out of this particular maelstrom of political animosity just yet. As a matter of fact, we really won't evolve from that anytime soon. But the worst of it, the most blatant lying or the most blatant misrepresentation will happen over the next 3.5 months. And it'll pop up from year to year just because Mars and Mercury are never going to be really that far away from each other this year. The other, and also with Jupiter conjoining Rahu, it gives a chance for people in authority to lie very, very effectively. But it's also a time when people will get very fed up with that and very destructive and very, and even turn to um, radical theories in order to explain situations. So you'll see an increasing emphasis on spirituality. The spirituality will sort of be alien to them. It will be very, very different from what they've accustomed themselves to believe. And there'll be a lot of scandals, as I said, around political leaders and around people of faith and around teachers in general. So it's is something I've seen repeatedly in my years as an astrologer. Jupiter Rahu conjunctions bring those hidden scandals, not only sexual scandals, but dishonesty. It uncovers truths. Jupiter Rahu conjunctions, Venus Rahu conjunctions uncover truths. And you'll start to see that a lot around people. The other thing is, with Mars in this particular sign, this gives sort of like a continuing decline to real estate. And I think one of the things that I always look for now, Mars in these harmonic charts, and I don't really talk about harmonic charts that much, but Mars is in its own sign right now in harmonic charts. So there's going to be a slight decline until around April. Then you'll see a rapid decline in real estate. And let's see now, what else are we looking for? So we spoke about the Mercury retrograde, so that will end on the 18th, and that'll be better for communications. It isn't necessarily a bad time to buy something. I think I want to disavow people that old saw in astrology. It is a bad time, and it's not a bad time to make new agreements or make breakthroughs or write. As a matter of fact, this chart is really a good writing chart. It's going to provide, especially over the next few months, a lot of good philosophical writing opportunities, a lot of good conversations, a lot of revelations that are really quite good. But again, Mercury's bad for communication, so a lot of what people say will be misunderstood and will have to be repeated or corrected down the road. That's really about the only thing that Mercury does. It gives short-term bad judgment. So for certain people, they'll have these very, very strong perceptions, so they'll have to do something quickly. When Mercury retrograde actually encourages introspection and it encourages people thinking about what they want and what they want to bring into their lives. So overall, not a bad year. And let's look at the individual and that Mars in Rahu, Mars in Taurus, excuse me, tends to bring about a lot of courage for this year, a lot of courage and a lot of effort to try new things. But there will be, because the year, I think the year will be inherently economically unstable. I really do. I hope I'm wrong about that, by the way. So no astrologer uh, in in uh, in their right minds thinks that looks forward to uh, bad economic times or shifting economic times. There'll be a lot of shifts in the economy. When shifts in the economy occur, people get hurt. That's just the flat out truth of it. I hope that I'm actually the shifts are beneficial to you and that we find a way to deal with some of the problems that I'm expecting us to see. With Saturn and Aquarius, it looks like there will be some reforms made. They'll be slow, but there will be some reforms made over the next couple of years. But we will still be in an inflationary period for at least another year and a half. So just prepare for that. And again, strong possibility of recession, or to use um, a term which I heard a lot in my 20s, stagflation. So essentially negative or neutral economic growth combined with inflation. So the economy feels like you're running twice as hard to stay in place as you normally would. So that there wasn't necessarily a lack of jobs in the late 70s. Actually, there were quite a few jobs in the late 70s, but the cost of living was very high, and it was compared to what it had been. And I think one of the things that always happens in these times is even if people are getting ahead, they'll feel like they're not getting ahead. And Also, with Rahu Mahadasha happening in the United States, it puts the United States sort of at odds with the rest of the world, just in general. It's not really even intentional. There's a need, a very strong need for reform when this conjunction happens. When Rahu, especially when Rahu's with Jupiter, and we'll feel we're right. The United States has this annoying habit of feeling it's right and the rest of the world is wrong most of the time. I'm not saying that actually isn't, that there are times when that's correct, but nobody's right 100% of the time. It's just silly to assume that. So again, that kind of like um, eagerness to teach people a lesson, it can lead to foreign conflicts. It can lead to panics, and it can lead to economic instability. So let's talk about, again, like I said, on the positive, a lot of innovation, a lot of new ways of thinking about societal problems, a lot of new ways, a lot of new technology coming in. So those will all be beneficial. Those are the positives. But again, shifts are always uncomfortable. In the year of the rabbit, people look a little bit for comfort. They look a little bit for predictability. They're seeking it pretty much universally. So let's look at the individual signs, though, before I start going off too much on a tangent. I'm afraid I've already gone too far. And let's look at Aries. So just be aware, though, or expect some significant changes end of this month, especially in foreign relations. Um, April, maybe a break in the Ukraine war, Ukraine-Russia war, maybe a little bit before that, I hope. And also some additional breaks or changes in November when K2 changes signs, and it'll also be right after a solar and lunar eclipse. So the 3 points for this year, especially in terms of financial matters and political matters, I would look at will be the end of January, as the year changes and philosophy changes, April through June, and again, November, October through late November, well, when there'll be a shift of the nodes. All right, so let's look at your individual signs. I've gone on a little bit longer than I want to in that particular section. And we have Aries still craving money, but more able to do things about it. It's not going to feel quite as reversed as it did before. A lot of the progress it wants to make, it'll be able to make. Relationship life for Aries will still seem to be kind of a burden or kind of a drag until around the end of the year, unfortunately. But at least there'll be more luxury or convenience for the sign. Communications will be difficult for this sign as well, being able to tell people what it wants or what it desires, and also enemies will seem to be in the background, will seem to be defeated, but they'll still be there. And finally, in terms of career life, this sign will feel a lot of drive to change careers or change occupations. I wouldn't recommend doing it really until April, though, if you're planning on doing that. If you've already done it, it's okay. Don't worry about it. But April, May is really the time to do that. For Taurus has for the following week. So this is true for the week for Aries as well as for the next year. Taurus has Rahu in the 12th house. So again, too much spending on consumer goods, maybe too much spending on spirituality or spending to make you feel good. Gemini is the second house, and Virgo's the 5th house. So bad communications internally with family, and also with children, and also with lovers. And Mars, this sign will be kind of obsessed with relationship life. Feel like it's being taken a little bit advantage of in relationships. Sun and Venus and Saturn are in the 9th house. That's actually good for the sign. It gives an increase in status. It's what they call a Raj Yoga combination for this particular sign, because the 4th Lord is combined with the first Lord, and it's combined with the 9th and the 10th Lord. So that's a really lucky combination for advancement at work, but only if you're willing to work hard. And Jupiter's in the 11th house, so there should be some financial gains and some gains through friendships. For Gemini has Mercury in the 7th house, so again, communication problems abound in this chart, especially with relationship partners for this sign. And there'll be a certain stubbornness in relationship life for this sign, and a certain feeling of not really getting ahead or just being deadlocked. It'll feel comfortable. The relationship partner will seem to be nicer at times, but you really see a change in relationship life towards the end of January for the better. And for this sign, a lot of desires will be filled for this sign over the coming year, hidden desires, especially connected with relationships. And the moon is in the 4th house. That indicates some change of status or some change in residence. It's actually a good placement. The moon is actually lucky in this particular sign. It builds things, so it may be some new construction or some new renovation at a place where you live. K2's in the 5th house, so still some problems with children, but not necessarily in a bad way. Almost the worst of this transit is over. It's since K2's in Swati Nakshatra right now, so children will seem to be a little bit prone to illness, but also kind of indecisive about their future, kind of like wandering and a little bit disoriented. Mercury's and we already spoke about Mercury and also the eighth house, so some unexpected gains from the eighth house too. Jupiter's in the 10th, so again, career life for this sign has been very good over the past year or so, and it will continue to be good. And then there'll be gains after April for this sign. Rahu's in the 11th house. Gains will be tough to hold on to. And Mars is in the 12th house, so that'll be a lot of behind the scenes fighting, but generally sexual life is good when this transit occurs. For Cancer, Cancer has Sun, Saturn, Venus in the seventh house. There superficially, this can give some temptation in relationships. That's very superficial. It can also mean relationship partners, which seems to be very nice, and you'll be focusing a lot of your attention on relationship partners' wealth and their attractiveness and how nice they are to you. So from this particular placement, a lot of the difficulty that people with sun sign in Cancer or moon sign in Cancer have had with relationship partners being a little bit difficult to get along with will actually pass within about a week. So that'll be nice. And again, they'll have to be careful about illnesses to family members, especially brothers, and also illnesses to parents. The other thing that's positive, though, about this placement is Jupiter's in the ninth house, and that should give increased luck. Career life will be overall good. You'll see a lot of gain, a lot of status gain, and 11th house Mars gives a lot of financial growth. For Leo, Leo has Mars direct in the 10th house, so career life will start to be, you'll start to feel a new purpose in career life. You'll start to feel a new exuberance, a new increase in status, new prosperity. Moon is in the second house. This will increase financial gains, but again, there'll be a little bit overspending. It's probably time to curb the spending a little bit. K2 is in the third house. The sign is very courageous. It's very giving. It's very generous, but again, probably too generous. And finally, let's go on to Mercury. Not finally, Mercury's in the fifth house, so communication patterns with children will be difficult. Again, watch out for illnesses, although a lot of that is past. And I think really the only illness you'll have to worry about is fatigue or exhaustion. To be honest with you, Saturn enters the seventh house. Relationship life will be tough after next week, though. Jupiter is in the eighth house. Unexpected gains or financial growth for Leos. Rahu's in the ninth. Okay, so this will give some discontentment at the workplace, some discontentment with supervisors. Unfortunately, that'll continue for about really most of the year. I hate to tell you that, but there will be gains at work. There will be gains in terms of goals you set for yourself. You will achieve what you want to be, what you want for yourself. And finally, the moon is, again, watch out for spending money. Again, that comes up repeatedly in a lot of these signs, but this is very true for Leo, um, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, and to a certain extent Pisces. So it's, and also Aquarius. So about half the zodiac has to watch out for expenses, just being careless with money. A lot of that will change within about a week, but it's just a good idea. For Virgo, Virgo has Moon in the first house. It's in Chitra Nakshatra. Extremely good for building things, for even building careers. It doesn't necessarily have to be an actual building itself. And K2's in the second house in Swati. That's very good for realizing gains from a variety of different directions. Mercury's in the fourth house, so again, there's still some confusion about direction in life. That a lot of that will be, and there have been some delays in terms of projects you expected to get going earlier this year. They'll start to move forward. And you'll start to punch through within about a week. Can't Capricorn's the fifth house for this sign, so there's a lot of past life credit. Some of the past life credit will include extra work. Some of the past life credit will include uh, paying people back money that you owe them. Some of the past life credit will include financial gains and rewards from teaching. So this is actually a good combination. It's good for spiritual life as well in this chart. So there'll be reconnection with spiritual teachers and spiritual leaders, but also there'll be opportunities to teach and to gain and to expand knowledge for Virgo this year and also this coming week. Jupiter's in the seventh house, good for relationships. This sign can do no harm in terms of dealing with other people right now. And let's see now. Eighth house, we have Rahu in the eighth house. A lot of obsession with finding out secrets or finding out what's going on behind the scenes. Some people would like to call it conspiracy theories. I prefer not to. I think it's interesting to know what the story is behind the story. Sometimes these things are silly. Sometimes these things are they're really true. Some things that we heard were not true are turning out to be true, and some things that we heard were not true were true are turning out not to be true. So that's a fascinating development for me. And like I said, it's not only on one side of the spectrum; it's on both sides. I'm one of those people who kind of like surprises in terms of um, what people thought was true and were convinced was absolutely happening. And then when you look at the rest of the story, you go like, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't what was happening at all. And my interest in this actually started back in the 1960s when we were involved in Vietnam. So I so this is just the foundation. I'm just giving you this as the foundation. So for years we were told we were going into we were uh, Vietnam was a good war, and some people I know still believe that that's true. And I'm not here to argue politics, but I looked and I actually read up on historians' assessments of the war, and I went like, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't seem like such a good idea. This is to me. Okay, so you may have hold a different belief. And I and within a couple of years of that, people um, more people agree with me than disagree with me. When I start off, more people disagree with me than agree with me. I'm not saying that's always going to be the case, and I'm not saying it's always going to be this big um, reversal of knowledge, but what's true is what's obviously true isn't always obviously true. So, so, so just that's sort of an ethos I live by. Um, so that doesn't mean I think everyone else is wrong. Okay. Uh, Sometimes something is what it seems to be. But the longer I've lived, the more I've seen that isn't the case. So, like I said, that's just my experience. So this particular sign should do fairly well this week and this year. Again, there will still be some slowness for the sign, but overall, you'll see some progress being made. Libra has K2 in the first house. That won't go away for a while. The good news for that, though, is that Saturn stops aspecting K2 next week. So That confusion will also not be tainted by um, inability to take action. You'll actually start moving around, trying different things, seeing what feels right, and that's good. It'll at least give you a good experimental period for about another 10 months or so. Mercury's in the third house, still some problems with communications. Sun and Venus and Saturn are in the fourth house. A lot of focus on home, but also more focus on working on education and on politics and on things out in the world. So there'll be more political involvement for you. There'll be more exterior communication. So that Saturn won't have you feeling like you're imprisoned. Okay. Um, it's more of an experimental time for Librans. They'll have chances to try new things and they won't feel quite as constricted. Jupiter in the sixth house, again, be careful about who you trust because enemies will disguise themselves as people giving you good advice. And when I say enemies, I mean people who are interested in you not really exploring different options or trying different things. Rahu is in the seventh house, still some dissatisfaction in relationship life. Mars is in the eighth house. Some potential for disruption in relationship life, but not as bad as it has been. And Mars goes to the ninth within about a month and a half, so there's good money making potential here. And career wise, there'll be a lot of focus on career gains and even changing careers over the next year or so, abandoning some aspects of career life. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Mars in the seventh house, so like Taurus, they'll be obsessed with relationships. Mercury's in the second house, a lot of communication and a lot of interest in making money through talking. Saturn, Venus, and Sun in the third house. This sign will be quite a bit of a charmer over the next year, over the next few months. Jupiter has, over the next few weeks, excuse me, Jupiter has, it's in the fifth house, good relationships with children. Rahu's in the sixth house, a little bit of paranoia about disease. We already spoken about Mars, and Moon is in the 11th, so it should give good financial gains to the sign. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has Mercury in the first house, Jupiter in the fourth. So again, there's that interchange between communication and knowledge in the sign. Saturn is going to have a lot of interest in seeking out old and traditional knowledge, maybe even feeling like you're not worthy to receive that kind of knowledge, which is not true. Venus will make the person work hard to achieve knowledge, and Sun will give a lot of luck to this particular sign. Rahu is in the fifth house, so some disagreements with children. Mars is in the sixth, so again, be careful about accidents for this particular sign. Try to stay out of wars, Sagittarius, United States. And I think it will, but I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there. And finally, let's go to Aquarius and Pisces. Aquarius has Saturn in the 12th. So again, that spending pattern, which will tend to collapse a little bit within about a week. The sign will say, okay, I have enough. I don't need a lot of other stuff, or it'll start to gain more money. Jupiter's in the second house, and there'll be a lot of emphasis on teaching for the sign. Rahu's in the third house, and Mars is in the fourth house. So this may cause, so the desires of the sign may cause some arguments at home. And when I mean that, there'll be a desire to travel, there'll be a desire to explore new areas. And Ketu's in the ninth house. It produces a very mystical period for the sign, along with the moon in the eighth house. It makes this sign very interested in investments and interested in financial matters. Mercury is in the 11th house, so you'll see friends from the past return, and you'll see Venus and Sun and Saturn in the 12th house again, increasing the interest in travel. Finally, for Pisces, Pisces has a good week and a good year ahead of it. Rahu's in the second house. There's a lot of focus on gain. Mars is in the third house, a lot of short trips. and Jupiter in the first house. Again, a lot of focus on. So this sign will be relatively lucky and it'll write. It'll feel like a lot of pressure to write. K2 being in the eighth house from the rising sign, very strong mystical experiences, but again, a little bit accident prone. Be careful, don't overindulge in any uh, mind altering substances, including caffeine. Mercury's in the 10th house. There'll be a lot more focus on writing and communications as a career. And finally, Venus, Saturn, and Sun are in the 11th house, new friends from the past. So let's go very, very quickly to the um, time and space map. All right, so these are the areas I'm expecting to see some issues in over the next few weeks. Mars is still next to Hawaii, and so that again still puts it in a dangerous spot for volcanoes. The moon is and some potential for bad water activity over here, and even some potential earthquakes uh, over here on the west coast. I, we know there's been a lot of flooding on the west coast. This can be a Mercury indicator too because it produces rapid change. And we have the sun having in between Venus and Mercury, so that will produce some rapid earth changes in California and Mexico. And when I say earth changes, it doesn't necessarily mean earthquakes. It just means, or that large chunks of land will be taken away, but some potential for floods and some potential um, for natural disasters. Some governmental problems all the way through the middle of the United States, up through really through Michigan. Some disruption in leadership in Texas, through Oklahoma, through uh, Indiana and Michigan, and also some disappointment in the middle of Texas, some restrictions in the middle of Texas, all going all the way into Canada through Kansas. And as we go over here, we see that unfortunately, a lot of the unrest we've been seeing in Western South America will continue. Chile was supposedly in line for a major earthquake. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I hope it doesn't happen soon. And I'm just looking carefully at the chart to see which line we have down here. And there have been some disruptions to governments along this zone, down by Bolivia and Argentina in South America. And as I said before, we'll see there'll be some changes in government. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the current president will be kicked out of office, but we have that Rahu line going through the tip of Brazil, and we had those demonstrations last week. Something I've been looking at for the past few months in Brazil. It's certainly not that domestic crisis down there is I think is far from over, and you'll see a lot of disruption in that country and also in West Africa, because there's a big old Rahu line. I'm sorry, there's a big old Saturn line running through here, and Saturn is so you'll see some problems in the ASRs and some problems in Western Africa. And I was right last week. That is where Sierra Leone is. Gosh darn it. And Liberia is down here. I was checking my maps the other day. So my memory is not as bad as I thought it was. And let's see now over here, expecting some changes in some shifts in governments in all the way through Norway, Sweden, down through Germany, down through Italy. So again, these aren't national changes, but some disruption. all the way down through Algeria, down through the west coast of, of Africa, and all the way down to South Africa. So it's going to be an interesting time. Um, I need to look at the map a little bit more closely. Turkey has a sun line running through it, so there are governmental reforms in place, but you'll also see some more um, anxiety connected with government and some more financial anxiety in Turkey and Egypt and down through Western Africa. Rahu in Saudi Arabia and Iran and Russia expect to see some scandals connected with the government. That's not really surprising. We have Venus and a Saturn line heading through Iran, so there'll be some problems from women in particular in that part of the world, and also in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Um, there have been some things which really haven't been covered in the news that much in Pakistan, which we should be paying attention to. Also, India looks like it will have, and Bangladesh and Eastern Mongolia and I'm sorry, Western Mongolia, and we'll have some domestic problems, maybe even some potential for conflict over the next few months. This won't necessarily happen right away, but over the next few months in particular. And let's see now, if you look at China, China is still attempting to recover from the policies that it's instituted, from its need for control, and also from apparently from the new outbreaks of COVID, although I'm tending to think that some of these things are more about China's need for control than they are about public health. This is about Southeast Asia as well, what we used to call French Indochina, which is now Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and those areas will show some domestic unrest, and that will also be true in Indonesia. And South Korea is showing South Korea and North Korea are showing a Jupiter line through it. So again, this is going through North Korea in particular. So North Korea has a need to prove it's right. Finally, let's go over to Japan. I'm running out of time. And Japan is okay. It looks like it's in fairly good shape. Rahu will be a little bit panicky, and that's about it. So until next week, namaste. Take care of yourself. I love everybody. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry this was so rushed towards the end. I'll try to pace it better next time. Thanks a lot and be well, everyone. I love everyone. Bye-bye.